Have you ever judged someone or something based solely on its appearance, only to realize later that what you overlooked could have been the very thing that changed everything? What if the true value of something or someone was hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to be discovered? The scorching sun over Crestville melted into the afternoon haze, casting a golden shimmer on the row of crawling cars trapped in traffic. Horns honked in frustration. Somewhere in the mix of honking buses and grumbling engines, a sleek, black 2022 Range Rover Velar stood out, glistening like something out of a movie. Leaning against it was Ethan Bennett, freshly trimmed hair, designer sunglasses on, and the kind of smug grin that could curdle milk. He scrolled lazily through his phone, barely noticing the heat. His white shirt was crisp, tucked perfectly into his tan trousers, and his loafers gleamed like polished chestnuts. Then came a sound, a faint puttering. It was the unmistakable chug-chug-chug of a car that had seen better decades. The noise grew louder, and Ethan turned his head slowly, as if already preparing to laugh. And there it was, his wife's 2006 Toyota Corolla, dusty, slightly dented at the side, with the left side mirror held on by clear tape. It moved forward like it was trying not to draw attention to itself. Ethan let out a loud, exaggerated laugh. "Ah, Claire, are you serious right now?" Drivers in nearby cars turned. Some raised their brows. A few burst into light chuckles. The Corolla came to a soft stop beside the Range Rover. The window rolled down, and Claire, 30, gently pushed her curly hair away from her forehead. Her cheeks were flushed, either from embarrassment or the heat, or both. In the back seat, Lily, their 6-year-old daughter, clutched her cartoon-themed lunch bag and stared quietly through the dusty window. Her big eyes blinked behind her pink glasses as she looked from her father to her mother. Ethan pushed himself off the Range Rover and strode toward Claire's window, a wide grin still on his face. He tilted his head and said loud enough for half the street to hear, "Claire, babe, you should honestly be ashamed driving this box on wheels. You want to ruin my brand image." One of his friends, lounging nearby under the umbrella of a Golden Bite cafe, laughed out loud. "Chairman, you day represent leave that jalopy for the museum." The small group of men, all dressed in smart casuals, holding iced drinks and pastries, chuckled. One even took a quick photo of the two cars side by side. Ethan didn't notice, or didn't care. Claire bit her lip and avoided eye contact. "Sorry I'm late. I was caught up at the tailor's place. He messed up Lily's school dress, and I had to." Ethan waved a hand dismissively. "You always have an excuse. This is the 21st century, Claire. You're still driving this thing." He tapped the bonnet lightly. It made a soft clinking noise, like a dying kettle. Claire glanced at Lily, whose tiny face pressed closer to the glass. "Ethan," she said softly, "can we not do this here? Please." But Ethan was already heading back to his Range Rover. "A bag shift. You're blocking the view," he called out, sliding into the driver's seat and slamming the door. He revved the engine like a movie star about to escape an explosion, waved at his friends with a wink, and then drove off smoothly, tires barely making a sound. Claire sat frozen for a second. She took a deep breath, adjusted the AC knob, and leaned back in her seat. "Are you okay, Mommy?" Lily asked from the back, her voice small and unsure. Claire turned, smiled gently, and reached back to hold her daughter's hand. "Yes, sweetheart. Mommy's just thinking, why did Daddy laugh at our car?" Claire looked away quickly, her smile fading as the traffic cleared slightly. She didn't answer. Instead, she started the engine again, and the Corolla reluctantly moved forward. Back at home, the house was quiet. Their apartment in Maple Heights Estate was spacious, painted in cream and gold, with polished floors and minimal furniture. Ethan liked it looking like a showroom. Claire had long stopped arguing about making it feel more homey. She helped Lily change into her comfy pajamas and settled her with a cartoon on the living room TV. The little girl giggled, quickly forgetting the street drama. Children had a way of moving on faster. Claire went to the kitchen and began boiling water for tea. She leaned against the counter and looked at her reflection in the shiny microwave. Her eyes were tired. Her shirt was creased from sitting in traffic. A little mascara had smudged under one eye. She sipped her tea slowly. 10 minutes later, she heard the familiar purr of Ethan's Range Rover as it pulled into the compound. The gate creaked shut behind him. He walked in, humming and checking his phone. "Oh, you're back," Claire said without looking up. Yeah. Guess what?" he said, already excited. "I just signed an offer this evening. I'm buying into a luxury car dealership, Eagle Crest Motors. Their showroom is insane, Claire. I'm talking Rolls-Royce, Porsche, even Bentleys. It's going to be the biggest move of my career yet." Claire blinked. "You bought a dealership?" "Well, I'm finalizing tomorrow. The paperwork's basically done. I met the general manager, super respectful guy. I think he's afraid of me already." He grinned, clearly proud. "Once this deal is locked, my name will shake this town." Claire nodded slowly. "That's big." He was too busy pacing and narrating the meeting to notice the change in her tone. "Do you know what they call me on the street now?" "Sir Ethan the boss." Claire didn't respond. She stirred her tea again. Ethan walked over, kissed her on the forehead absent-mindedly, and headed toward the bedroom. "Tomorrow, you'll see. By this time next week, I'll be driving a Porsche to your mechanic's funeral." Claire gave a dry chuckle. "Right?" She heard the bedroom door close. Her eyes lingered on the mug in her hand. The steam curled upward. Later that night, when the house was quiet and Lily was fast asleep, Claire stepped into the small study room that Ethan rarely entered. It was simple, just a desk, a laptop, a bookshelf with a few old novels, and a filing cabinet. She sat and opened the laptop. The blue screen flickered to life. She clicked through several folders, opened a browser, and logged into an email titled Adele Ross Holdings. A series of unread emails glowed on the screen. "Eagle Crest Motors. Final ownership confirmation. Urgent. Silent partner clause reminder. Board meeting tomorrow, 10 a.m. Claire clicked the first one. The subject line expanded. "Dear Ms. Adele Ross, as per the initial agreement signed 3 years ago, any new buyer must receive final clearance from the silent partner before transfer of majority shares. Kindly confirm your availability for tomorrow's executive meeting." Claire stared at it for a few moments. Then, slowly she typed, "I'll be there." She hit send, closed the laptop, and leaned back. A quiet smile curled at the corners of her lips. Down the hallway, Ethan snored softly, lost in dreams of sleek showrooms, leather seats, and paparazzi cameras. He had no idea. The next morning, traffic once again held the city of Crestville in a tight grip, but Claire wasn't in it. She had taken a different route, driving the old Corolla quietly through the back roads, past fruit stalls, cobblers, school children with heavy bags, and women selling Accra by smoky roadside grills. Inside the car, the radio hummed a slow gospel tune. Claire wasn't singing along. She was calm, focused. She wore a simple navy blue dress with small silver buttons. Her heels sat in the passenger seat. She always drove in flats. As she neared the towering glass building of Eagle Crest Motors, the guards at the gate recognized her at once. They didn't hesitate. "Good morning, Ma," they greeted, quickly opening the gate. "Welcome." Claire nodded and drove in, the Corolla humming one last sigh as she parked discreetly behind a row of luxury cars. She stepped out, slid on her heels, adjusted her sunglasses, and made her way inside. Meanwhile, back at the apartment, Ethan was still brushing his teeth, humming confidently. "Today, I become a dealership owner," he said to his reflection. "Let the world bow." He didn't know yet that the world had already bowed to someone else, and she had just walked in her own building. Before we continue, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts so far, and most importantly, subscribe. You won't want to miss what's coming next. And hey, share this with someone who loves a good twist. Alright, let's get back to the story. Before Crestville traffic, before the Range Rover, before Ethan's loud laugh echoed down the street, there was Glenbridge Market, hot, noisy, and packed tighter than a sardine can. 8 years ago, Claire Matthews was 22, freshly out of university, and posted to Glenbridge for her 1-year national service. Her khaki NYSC uniform was always a little too big, and her jungle boots always looked like they belonged to someone else. But her heart, that one was all hers, determined, full of plans, and beating like a drum. She lived in a small single room that smelled faintly of wood polish and lemon soap. The ceiling fan squeaked when it turned, but she didn't mind. Each morning, she woke up before dawn, tied her hair into a puff, and carefully arranged small bottles of perfume, phone accessories, and a pile of thrift clothes into a second-hand duffel bag. Then she headed to Glenbridge Market. Buy original body spray, buy nice earrings, screen guard. "Madam, I get for your phone," she would call, weaving between stalls. Some days were slow, some slower, but Claire kept saving every naira, every coin. While others spent their NYC allowance on takeout and clothes, Claire hoarded hers like gold. She kept her notes inside a hardcover biology textbook titled Introduction to Living Things because she figured no one would think to steal science. By the end of her service year, Claire had saved just enough to feel rich for the first time in her life. And that was when she met Ethan. It was at her cousin's wedding. Outdoor, small, and beautiful. The garden was filled with colorful plastic chairs, plates of rice, soda bottles balanced on laps, and a DJ who clearly believed volume was more important than quality. Claire wore a simple lilac dress. She wasn't the most flashy, but there was a quiet glow around her, like someone who'd earned every inch of her smile. Ethan arrived halfway into the ceremony, dressed in a navy blue blazer and tan chinos, phone glued to his ear, sunglasses resting on his collar like a rich uncle's necklace. He noticed Claire immediately, not because she was loud, but because she looked like someone who had seen life and decided to keep walking anyway. They ended up on the same bench during the reception, picking at jollof rice and exchanging small talk. He was charming, quick with compliments, eager to listen. "I run a small startup," he had said, flashing a confident smile. "A tech idea that'll change online shopping in Nigeria. Still building it, but it's huge. Investors will come crawling." Claire, eyes wide, listened like a child being told bedtime stories. "Wow," she'd whispered. "I love people who build things. I've always wanted to be a part of something like that." And that was it. 1 week later, they were dating. 1 month later, she had moved to his city to start a life together. 2 months later, she had put nearly all her savings into his tech idea. "You believe in me?" he had asked. "Yes," she'd said, without hesitation. He kissed her forehead. She didn't know then that believing in him would become her full-time job. The tech idea, called Clickify, took off after 9 grueling months. Claire stayed up helping him design rough drafts, answered emails when he was too tired, even met with a small web developer from across town. She cleaned up pitch decks and brainstormed catchphrases. When the first investor wired in money, Ethan danced around the house like a child. "I told you it would work," he shouted. "We're going to be rich." Claire laughed, cried, and hugged him. But things changed after that. Suddenly, Ethan's voice grew louder, his ego heavier. He started introducing her to people as "Claire, my girlfriend. She's just helping me hold things down. Just helping." One night, over a candlelit dinner in a small bistro, he casually said, "Honestly, babe, I need someone more strategic on the team. Someone who's not just emotional about ideas." Claire blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're great, but sometimes you come off like a liability." Her chest tightened. "And what?" He smiled, still chewing. "It's not personal." After that night, things weren't the same. He no longer asked for her opinion. He dismissed her suggestions. When the company hit its first big success, his interviews never mentioned her. In public, she was the quiet girlfriend. In private, she became invisible. But Claire wasn't the type to break. She bent quietly, like a branch in wind. Until one night, she stopped bending altogether. While Ethan was sleeping, she opened her laptop and created a new email address. Adele.ross01@investlink.com. It sounded strong, like a woman who never begged for a seat. She built her own table. Under that name, she started investing. Quietly, cautiously. She took online classes, learned from forums, and paid attention to small import businesses no one noticed. She put small amounts into niche car shipment companies. She bought shares using a finance firm that didn't require face-to-face appearances. 1, then 2, then 5. She never told a soul. Each time she made a profit, she reinvested it. Each night, when Ethan snored beside her, she stared at the ceiling, counting not sheep, but plans. One night, While browsing a vehicle auction site from Germany, she found a company listed as Ardenvale Motors, struggling but full of potential. She stared at the screen, heart beating. "Adele Ross," she whispered. "Let's get you a car company." And she did. It took years. But piece by piece, one share at a time, she grew her portfolio. Ethan never knew. He was too busy being a public genius to notice the private rise of the quiet woman beside him. Now, back in the present day, glass walls, a long mahogany table, dozens of files stacked neatly, the soft hum of air conditioning. The boardroom was silent, except for the sound of a pen scratching paper. A woman in a white fitted suit sat at the head of the table. Her hair was pulled into a sleek bun, and her nails were painted in a light lavender shade. Her skin glowed, and her eyes stayed sharp behind thin gold-rimmed glasses. She reached for the final page, flipped it over, and signed. Adele Ross Auto Group. It was done. The room applauded politely. "Congratulations, ma'am," said a tall man with graying temples. "With this signature, you now own full controlling rights over Ardenvale Motors and its new branch, Eagle Crest Motors." Claire stood slowly. "Thank you, Mr. Jennings." Another board member leaned forward. "There's still one small matter. Someone just signed an offer to purchase 40% shares in Eagle Crest." Claire turned to him, her smile calm. "Yes, I know. I approved it." He raised a brow. "You did?" She picked up her phone. "Yes. I'm letting him believe he's buying something." The board members exchanged curious glances. "May we ask who he is?" Mr. Jennings asked. Claire looked up. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Ethan Bennett." A pause. Then a slow smile spread across her face. The office smelled like leather seats, brand new tires, and opportunity. Ethan Bennett leaned back in the plush visitor's chair of Crestville Motors, spinning a pen between his fingers while grinning like a man who believed the universe owed him. Across the sleek glass table, the sales rep smiled politely, clearly impressed by his expensive cologne and louder-than-needed confidence. "So, just to confirm," the man said, tapping on a silver laptop, "you're finalizing payment today for full purchase of Eagle Crest Motors?" Ethan raised his brows, pretending to think. Don't want a dealership that practically sells itself?" "Of course I do." They both laughed. His bank app dinged with confirmation. 30 million down. Done. The rep stood and shook his hand. "Congratulations, Mr. Bennett. You're now officially the face of Eagle Crest." Ethan adjusted his watch. "Oh, they're not ready. Just wait till my investors see what I've done." The rep slid a thick folder toward him. "Just one thing, sir. Clause 18C, standard paperwork for all acquisitions in our network. Signature from a silent partner is required for full access to executive decision-making rights." Ethan frowned slightly. "Silent partner?" "Yes. Nothing to worry about. It's mostly procedural. Just a formality." Ethan shrugged, flipping the page. His eyes skimmed over the clause. "Final operational access is granted only upon written approval from Ms. Adele Ross." He squinted at the name. It sounded familiar, like a perfume ad or an Instagram influencer. He blinked, then chuckled to himself. "All right, no problem." He signed anyway, because in Ethan's world, nothing ever came back to bite. That afternoon, back in the everyday chaos of real life, Claire stood by the school gate, shifting nervously from foot to foot. She was late again. The sun was hot, the security guard was scowling at his watch, and Lily, sweet 6-year-old Lily, was sitting quietly on the school bench, her little green lunch bag in her lap. Claire rushed over, breathless. "I'm so sorry, baby." Lily looked up, blinking. "It's okay, Mommy." They walked hand in hand to the car. Claire opened the dusty door of her old Toyota Corolla, the hinges creaking like they needed a prayer. Just as Lily was about to climb in, she paused. "Mommy." "Yes, sweetie. Why does Daddy hate your car?" Claire froze, one hand still on the door. Lily tilted her head. "He always says it's embarrassing." Claire tried to smile, but her throat tightened. She bent down, brushing hair from Lily's forehead. "Daddy just doesn't understand how special this car is." "Why?" Lily asked. "Because it brought me to you," Claire whispered, kissing her cheek. "And that's the best thing I've ever driven toward." Lily beamed, but Claire's heart was breaking. Later that week, things felt colder at home. like someone had turned the warmth down to barely surviving. Ethan stayed out late more often. He'd come home smelling like foreign soap and mints he never used to like. He claimed to be networking, pitching ideas, meeting important people. Claire noticed he smiled more at his phone than he did at her. She noticed a new name, Jenna, popping up on his screen in the middle of dinner. One night, he actually chuckled out loud and typed, "Your trouble faced with tears of joy." Claire, sitting across from him, stared in silence. "Who's Jenna?" she asked. He barely looked up. "Just a friend from work." "Oh," she nodded, clearing plates even though she hadn't touched her food. 2 days later, while folding laundry, she found a receipt in his jeans pocket, a fancy restaurant in Glenbridge. 2 meals, candle service, wine. She held it in her hand for a long time, the paper crinkling as her fingers tightened. That night, after Lily went to bed, Claire finally spoke. "Ethan." He was on the couch, one leg hanging off the armrest, scrolling through his phone. We need to talk." He sighed dramatically. "Not now, Claire. I'm tired. You're never home. I work. You come back late. I'm building something. With Jenna." He looked up sharply. "Excuse me?" Claire didn't flinch. "I saw the messages." He stood, scoffing. "This is exactly why I don't tell you things. You read too much into everything. You're always emotional." "You're married," she said quietly. Ethan raised his voice. "I'm a big man now, Claire. You wouldn't understand." She blinked. "Try me." He looked her up and down, then turned away. "You're still living like we're in Glenbridge. I've moved past that. You should too." He walked into the bedroom and shut the door. Claire stood there, surrounded by silence. Just her, and a mountain of folded shirts she suddenly didn't care to finish. That Friday night, something shifted. Claire stood in front of her mirror, zipping up a clean white blazer dress that fit like a second skin. Her makeup was soft but precise. Her bun, sleek and polished. Her heels clicked confidently on the floor tiles as she walked out of the room. She didn't tell Ethan where she was going. She didn't know him that anymore. 2 black SUVs waited outside. Her driver opened the door. "Ma'am, they're expecting you at the dealership." She nodded, stepping in. At Eagle Crest Motors, it was quiet. Most of the sales team had gone home, but a few workers were inside doing inventory. The second they saw her step through the door, they straightened up, adjusting their shirts. "Good evening, Ma," they said in unison. Claire walked past them like a breeze, graceful and unshaken. The manager jogged up, nervous but smiling. "We weren't expecting you tonight, Ms. Ross. Should I alert the partners?" She shook her head. "No, just the team leads. I want to see what I'm walking into." As she toured the building, people whispered, "That's the silent partner? She owns this place? I thought it was that guy, Ethan something," but none of the murmurs reached her. She walked with purpose, her eyes scanning every corner, every file, every smile. These were her halls now. At exactly 8:14 p.m., Ethan strolled into the dealership with his jacket slung over one shoulder, whistling a tune. He had come to impress some potential investors who were flying in the next day. He figured he'd check the space one more time, maybe even take a few photos for his Instagram story. He froze at the entrance, because standing there, arms folded, flanked by security, was his wife. "Claire." His mouth opened slightly. "Claire." She didn't speak. He looked around, confused. The workers were bowing. The staff manager was standing behind her like a junior intern. The 2 security men flanked her like she was royalty. Ethan stepped forward. "What's going on?" Claire stepped toward him too. Her voice was calm, but clear. "Welcome to Eagle Crest, Ethan." He squinted. Why are you here?" She smiled faintly. "You signed the papers, didn't you? Clause 18C. He blinked. Slowly. "Wait." She tilted her head. "You didn't read it properly, did you?" He looked at the workers. "Can someone please explain?" The manager cleared his throat, nervously. "Sir, she's Adele Ross." Silence. Ethan's breath caught. He turned back to her. "You?" Claire simply raised an eyebrow. "I don't understand how—" She walked past him, slowly, like the question didn't deserve an answer. "Good night, Ethan." And she was gone. Ethan stood rooted to the showroom floor, still trying to compute what just happened. The employees were bowing to his wife. His wife. Claire. The same woman he barely looked at when she served him breakfast. The woman he told last week to focus on school runs and leave business to men. He laughed. A short, confused laugh. Okay, Claire. You got me. This is some kind of prank, right? Is there a camera crew somewhere? Am I being punked? Claire simply adjusted the sleeve of her white blazer. You bought my dealership, she said, her tone light, almost playful, with the money I loaned you 6 years ago. Ethan blinked. What? You remember my NYSC savings? The money I gave you for your big idea? The one you said would change everything. He frowned, visibly thrown off. That was a gift. Claire gave a small laugh. Of course it was. A gift. Just like my time, my ideas, and the logo you stole and rebranded. Very generous of me. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Words didn't come as easily now. She walked over to a drawer near the reception desk, pulled it open, and took out a brown envelope. She held it up, fingers poised like she was presenting an award. These, she said, waving the papers slightly, are the original investment documents I made when I started Adele Ross Auto Group. You called them rubbish papers. You laughed when I said I registered a business. Ethan stared at the documents like they were in another language. You said, she continued, calmly, that I should leave big dreams to men who wear suits. One of the junior staff brought her a cup of tea. She thanked him with a nod. Ethan noticed no one even looked at him. He stepped forward. Claire, listen. Ms. Ross, she corrected. He froze. She turned to the manager. Pause the ownership transfer until further notice. I want the board to review Clause 18C and Clause 21. Ethan no longer holds controlling power until we finalize the review. Understood, ma'am. Ethan looked around like a man who'd walked into a party only to realize he wasn't invited. The staff avoided his eyes. One even walked past him without a nod. Just a week ago, they were calling him boss. He took a step toward Claire. Why are you doing this? She tilted her head. Why not? It's only fair. You always said business isn't personal. So let's keep it that way. And just like that, she walked out again, heels tapping with grace and calm that made the walls feel smaller. Fridays used to be Ethan's favorite. Office beers, golf plans, and unwinding after a hard week. Now Fridays were just long. No one at work really took his orders anymore. There were whispers, meetings he wasn't invited to. He noticed that any time Claire showed up, people rushed to clean their desks. Meanwhile, Claire had developed a new ritual. Every Friday morning, she wore soft pastels, usually a pink blouse or lavender dress, paired with nude heels. Hair in a neat bun. She'd leave the house early, always carrying the same navy blue file folder. She never mentioned where she was going. Ethan only found out by accident, thanks to the Uber app still synced to their family tablet. Glenview Medical Center, a high-end private hospital, discreet, specialized in fertility and genetic consultations. He didn't ask her, not directly. He knew better, but curiosity burned. One evening, when she left her folder unattended in the living room while bathing Lily, he crept close. The folder had a sticker label, Lily, DNA results. He backed away like it burned him. Why would Claire need DNA results for their daughter? Was it a medical issue? Or something else? He didn't dare open the folder. That weekend, Claire acted normal. She cooked pancakes, braided Lily's hair, even reminded Ethan to pay for the electricity bill. But everything fell off. The house was colder. Not in temperature, in tone. He started to see it. Small ways the world around him was shifting. The cleaner now knocked before entering his office. The intern he'd hired last month now took instructions only from Claire. She had a new assistant. Her name was Brooke, always dressed in pencil skirts and carrying a tablet. Brooke never smiled at Ethan. She nodded politely, like he was one of many clients. One afternoon, when Ethan arrived late for a board meeting, the room was already filled. Claire sat at the head of the table. The projector screen had a graph titled, Ownership Adjustment Proposal. He slid into a seat. Sorry I'm late. What's this about? The financial advisor didn't look at him. Instead, she turned to Claire. Shall I walk them through the changes, ma'am? Claire nodded, and Ethan felt something in his stomach drop. The advisor clicked through a few slides. As per updated filings, 60% of Mr. Bennett's initial assets have been legally transferred under a trust managed by Ms. Ross. The move was finalized via our corporate lawyer 3 months ago. Ethan nearly choked. What? Claire finally looked at him. I told you to read the prenup. He stood up. You had no right. She raised a hand. Sit down, Ethan. You're making a scene. The board members stared. Some sipped coffee. One cleared his throat awkwardly. Ethan sat, and for the first time, he realized he was no longer the loudest voice in the room. Claire had become something else. Not loud, not brash, just present, constant, quietly powerful. He looked across the table and wondered who the woman behind Adele Ross really was. Later that evening, he returned home to find Claire reading to Lily. She was animated, doing silly voices, and Lily giggled with joy. For a brief moment, it felt like nothing had changed. But when Claire closed the book and met his eyes, he saw it. Distance. In their bedroom, he tried again. Claire, can we talk? She sat on the bed, removing her earrings. About what, Ethan? Everything. Us. The business. Lily. She paused. Now you want to talk? He nodded. I've been thinking a lot. I know I've made mistakes. She gave a small smile, not cruel, just tired. That's the thing about mistakes, Ethan. They don't just vanish because you finally notice them. He walked toward her, reaching for her hand. She didn't move. I still love you, he said. She looked at him for a long moment. Then why did you treat me like a ghost for the last 3 years? He had no answer. The silence between them grew, thick and heavy. She stood up, walked to the window, and looked out. I used to pray you'd see me, not just as Lily's mother or the woman who cooks, but as someone with dreams. You laughed at me, Ethan. Not once. Many times. Even in front of our child. He looked down, ashamed. Claire turned, her voice softer now. This isn't revenge, if that's what you're thinking. It's balance. I spent years tipping the scale in your favor. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Claire's soft breathing beside him. And for the first time, he felt like a guest in his own life. The next morning in Crestville, the streets were alive as usual. Buses honked, food vendors shouted over the chatter, and the morning news played from a nearby electronics shop. Ethan adjusted his tie, trying to look composed as he walked into Bank Vera, one of the city's biggest banks. He nodded at the receptionist, smiled confidently at a teller, and made his way to the glass office marked Loans and Investment Division. He'd done this walk a dozen times before. Usually, they'd offer him coffee before he even sat. But today, the lady at the desk glanced up, barely made eye contact, and tapped on her keyboard. Good morning, Mr. Bennett. I'll get the manager. Please wait a moment. Ethan waited, and waited. 15 minutes passed. Then, 20. When the manager finally came, she didn't greet him with the usual warmth. Mr. Bennett, thank you for coming. Unfortunately, we've reviewed your current financial portfolio and, well, we can't approve your loan at this time. He stared at her, blinking. There must be a mistake. I've banked here for years. She offered a tight smile. I understand, sir. But the recent reallocation of your assets and the freeze placed on your company accounts have significantly altered your financial standing. Freeze? By who? She avoided his eyes. You'd have to check with your co-shareholder. Claire. He left the bank with a stiff jaw, ignoring the security man who tried to open the door for him. His phone buzzed. A message from Jenna. Jenna, I was just about to pay for my dress, but your card got declined. Want me to try again, or? He didn't reply. He sat in his car, staring at the screen. He had talked up his wealth for months. Now his cards were bouncing. Later that night, he met Jenna at a fancy rooftop lounge. She was already sipping a cocktail when he arrived, wearing a tight emerald dress and holding her phone like it was part of her hand. Hey, babe, he said, forcing a smile. She didn't smile back. Everything okay? Yeah, just bank stuff. Technical issue. She raised a brow. Weird. It's been happening a lot lately. He laughed nervously. It'll be sorted. I've got things lined up. She nodded slowly. Then, without missing a beat, she asked, You said you were buying a yacht next month, right? Still happening. He hesitated. Of course. What? She stirred her drink, then looked at him. Because a guy who can't pay for a Zara dress probably isn't buying a yacht. There was. The mask slipped. Wow, he muttered. Jenna finished her drink in one elegant sip, grabbed her purse, and stood. Call me when your card works. And just like that, she was gone. Back home, The house felt like a museum, cold, quiet, and too clean. He poured himself a drink and sat in the living room. Claire wasn't home, probably at another business meeting, or the hospital. The navy blue folder kept haunting his thoughts. He walked into the bedroom and opened the drawer where she usually kept important documents. The folder was gone. In a swirl of anger and confusion, Ethan slumped onto the bed. But as he reached for the bedside lamp, a small photo fell from behind the drawer. A black and white ultrasound image. There was a note on the back. "You were supposed to be our joy, but pain took you first." See, he stared at it for minutes. Then hours. Flashback 6 years ago. Claire sat on the bathroom floor, shaking, staring at the blood in her hands. Ethan had just slammed the door hours earlier, yelling about how she ruined everything by talking to his investors during dinner. She hadn't meant to. She just shared a few thoughts. But he called her embarrassing. Now she was alone, miscarrying a child neither of them knew she was pregnant with. She didn't call him. She didn't call anyone. The pain passed, but something in her heart didn't heal. A few months later, doctors told her she had complications from the miscarriage. A hysterectomy was recommended. Claire agreed, quietly, without fanfare. But before the surgery, she had her eggs preserved. And 3 years later, she gave birth to Lily through IVF. She had chosen the donor carefully. Strong medical background. Intelligent. Kind eyes. It wasn't about revenge. It was about healing. About motherhood. About rebuilding from ruin. She never told Ethan. He had disappeared emotionally long before the truth mattered. Back in the present, Claire stood in Lily's school auditorium, smoothing down her beige dress. Balloons lined the walls, and children ran around with paint-covered hands. It was art fair day at Crestville Elementary. Parents roamed the makeshift gallery filled with papier-mâché animals, macaroni portraits, and glitter explosions. Claire smiled as she spotted Lily waving at her from the corner. "Mommy, Mommy, come see mine." Claire walked over, her heels clicking softly on the wooden floor. Lily pointed at a large drawing taped to the wall. "That's our house," she said proudly. The drawing showed a huge pink house with a tall gate. Next to it was a tiny blue car, almost cartoonish in size. A stick figure labeled Mommy stood tall beside the house, and another stick figure, much smaller, stood beside the car. That one was labeled Daddy. Claire chuckled gently. "You did such a good job, baby." Lily beamed. "I told my teacher Mommy's house is big, and Daddy always parks outside 'cause his car is small." Ethan had arrived late. He entered just in time to hear that line. He stopped in the hallway, clutching Lily's forgotten water bottle. He had meant to hand it over and leave, but something in the air held him there. He looked at Claire, who was kneeling, hugging their daughter. She looked happy, peaceful, not a trace of the woman he used to berate. Then he heard a voice behind him. 2 men in suits were chatting casually. "You see her? That's Adele Ross Auto Group's CEO." Ethan froze. "You serious? I heard she owns half the car import licenses in the state. One of the richest women in Crestville, they say. And humble too. She still comes for school events. Respect." Their voices faded into the crowd, but Ethan didn't move. He stood still, like the air had grown too thick to breathe. Claire, his Claire, was Adele Ross. The woman the city whispered about. The business queen with quiet fire. She had built an empire under his nose. She had survived him. And now, she was raising a daughter he might not even share blood with. Ethan walked back to his car. This time, it felt smaller than ever. And for the first time in his life, he realized he didn't really know the woman he married. The silence in Ethan's new apartment was louder than anything he'd ever experienced. It was a far cry from the sprawling house he used to boast about, with its marble floors and voice-activated lights. Now, he lived in a one-room space tucked behind his old office building, the same one he had decorated with Claire's money years ago and once bragged about to investors. A flickering ceiling bulb buzzed above him as he tried to make instant noodles. The microwave beeped irritably. There was no Jenna anymore. No assistant scheduling calls. Just the hiss of boiling water and his own tired breathing. The news had spread fast. Ethan Bennett, once the rising star of Crestville's startup scene, had been dropped by investors. Rumors of mismanagement, failed acquisitions, and legal battles had made him a walking red flag in business circles. His calls went unanswered. Texts were left on read. His friends vanished like smoke. The final blow came when he saw a post online. His old business partner launched the very app Ethan had once pitched. Only this time it worked. Ethan had been left behind. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He simply sat down on the floor with his cup of noodles and stared at nothing. The wallpaper was peeling near the corners. A small spider crept across the kitchen sink. The heater made a low, gurgling sound that echoed through the room. A week later, he got on a bus to Willow Bend, the sleepy little town where his mother still lived. It had been years since he visited. She had sent him voice notes on birthdays and Christmas, but he always replied with short texts. Busy, love you. The bus ride felt longer than it used to. The trees looked older. The skies seemed heavier. He watched people board and leave, families chatting and holding hands. It made him feel like an outsider to his own life. When he knocked on her door, she opened it slowly, wearing her old knitted cardigan and holding a cup of tea. Ethan, she said softly, her face unreadable. Hi, Mom. She stepped aside, letting him in without another word. The house smelled of cinnamon and laundry soap. A picture of Ethan as a boy still sat on the mantel. Claire's wedding photo had been moved to a drawer. They sat in the living room, sipping tea. Outside, birds chirped lazily and the neighbor's dog barked at nothing. It's all gone, Mom, Ethan finally said, voice cracking. She didn't ask what. She just nodded and said, good. Maybe now you'll remember who you were before you wanted to be a god. He blinked. That's harsh. She sipped her tea. No. What was harsh was watching you turn into a man who thought success meant stepping on everyone else, including the woman who built you. He rubbed his hands together. She changed too. No, Ethan. She grew. You mocked her scars, forgetting she earned them protecting you. He looked down. His hands trembled. His mother reached out and squeezed his wrist gently. You loved her once, didn't you? He nodded, tears forming. I still do, but I broke her. His mother sighed. Then don't try to fix her. Fix yourself. That's the only apology that counts. That night, he slept in his childhood bed, surrounded by dusty shelves and comic books. He dreamed of Claire laughing in the market, back when they had nothing but ambition and a second-hand blender. The next morning, before he left, his mother handed him a small velvet box. It was part of your wedding day gift. You left it here when you moved. He opened it slowly. Inside was a mirror. The same one they'd used for a silly photo at the reception. He and Claire making goofy faces, her veil covering them both. The edges were chipped now, but the reflection was clear. He touched the glass gently. He returned to Crestville with a weight in his chest. Days turned into weeks. He worked part-time at a car rental desk just to pay rent. Every customer that came in reminded him of Claire's empire. Her name was everywhere. The Adele Ross logo was on billboards, bus stops, and even the little air fresheners they gave out with rentals. Ethan started wearing plain clothes, trying not to be recognized. But once, a customer squinted at him and asked, weren't you that guy on the tech panel a year ago? With a fancy watch? Nope, Ethan said quickly, handing over the keys. He walked home that night in the rain. One evening, he spotted Jenna at a cafe. She was laughing with a new man. Her smile didn't even falter when she saw him walk by. She just raised her cup and gave him a small, smug nod. That hurt more than he expected. His phone barely rang anymore. He started journaling in a notebook, something Claire had always done. At first, it felt silly, but soon it became his routine. Thoughts, regrets, memories, they poured out like rain. Tuesday, I saw Lily's old lunchbox in a shop window. The same one we used to argue about. I wanted her to have the one with sparkles. Claire wanted the eco-friendly one. We ended up buying both. Friday, I walked past the school today. Heard the kids singing. I remembered how Claire always packed notes in Lily's bag. You were loved. You were brave. I laughed at her for it once. I was wrong. Sunday, I missed the way she made tea. She used to swirl the spoon twice, then tap it on the rim before placing it down. I asked her why once. She said it was how her mother did it. I rolled my eyes. She smiled anyway. The memories didn't stop. On a rainy Friday, Ethan stood outside Crestville General Hospital. He'd seen Claire enter that building dozens of times over the past few months. Each time, he assumed she was sick or hiding something. But today, curiosity outweighed his pride. He waited until she came out, wrapped in a gray coat and talking to a nurse. She didn't see him, but he saw the folder in her hand. It said, "Emotional therapy notes." She wasn't sick. She was healing, not from illness, but from him. The realization knocked the breath from his chest. She'd gone to therapy so she could forgive him, and he'd spent months planning a comeback, chasing status and hiding from shame. He walked back slowly, head down, each step heavy. He passed the cafe they used to visit every Saturday morning. The sign had changed, but the smell of cinnamon and espresso was the same. For a moment, he could almost see Claire and Lily at the corner table, giggling over hot chocolate and banana pancakes. Later that night, he pulled out the mirror his mother had given him. He stared into it for a long time. His face looked tired. His eyes carried shadows he hadn't noticed before. He looked older, not in years, but in spirit. He turned the mirror over. On the back, Claire had once written with a marker, "To the man I believe in. Always." He touched the words gently. They had faded, but he could still read them. A week later, on a quiet Saturday morning, a knock came at his apartment door. He wiped his hands on his shirt and opened it. It was a delivery boy, maybe 19, holding a long envelope. "Package for Ethan Bennett," he said. "Thanks," Ethan replied, puzzled. He closed the door and sat at his table. His heart thumped as he tore the seal. Inside was a neatly typed letter on Adele Ross Auto Group stationery. There was no introduction, just a few short lines. "Approved. The dealership is now yours. But it's the last thing I'll ever give you. Signed, Claire Bennett, Adele Ross." His hands trembled. He read it again and again. She had signed off the dealership, the one thing he thought she'd never let go of. But it wasn't a reward. It was a goodbye. He leaned back in his chair, letter in hand, and let the silence take over. Not one word more. Not one chance left. Just a silent apology written in bold ink. He had wanted power, prestige, recognition. But in the end, all he had left was a piece of paper and the quiet echo of what could have been. The heater clicked off. The wind blew outside. And somewhere in the city, Claire was finally free. He looked into the mirror once more. And for the first time, he saw the cracks. The crowd at the Crestville Business Summit buzzed with excitement. The venue was full. Hundreds of people packed into a glittering hall, their eyes fixed on the stage. There was an energy in the air, a kind of expectancy, like everyone knew something big was about to happen. At the center of it all stood Claire Bennett, or, as the world now knew her, Adele Ross. Her name was no longer whispered in the background. She was the woman who owned the road, in more ways than one. Today, she was being honored as one of Crestville's most influential women in business, the kind of recognition that she had once only dreamed of. But this day wasn't just about the shiny awards and applause. This was Claire's moment, her real triumph. The event had all the usual glitz and glamour, flashing cameras, guests mingling with champagne glasses, the occasional laughter echoing across the room. But Claire wasn't focused on any of it. She was preparing herself backstage, glancing at her reflection in the mirror. Her tailored suit fit her perfectly, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and her confidence radiated from her. A year ago, she couldn't have imagined herself standing in this spot, on the verge of a life she had built alone from nothing. But here she was, and nothing was going to take this away from her. As the announcer called her name, the room erupted in applause. Claire stepped out from behind the curtain, and the cheers grew louder. Her smile was warm, though there was a hint of something deeper behind her eyes, perhaps a quiet pride in herself that had taken years to nurture. She had earned this. All of it. From the painful years of pretending to be someone she wasn't, to the silent nights spent working on her dreams when no one believed in her. This was the culmination of everything. Claire took the microphone, glancing out at the sea of faces in front of her. She could see them all. The same people who had mocked her, belittled her ambitions, and turned their backs on her when she needed them the most. She had made it, and now, it was time for them to hear her story. "Good evening, everyone," Claire began, her voice steady and calm. "I'm honored to be here today, not just as a businesswoman, but as a woman who's learned that success isn't always measured by the size of your car or the price of your clothes. It's about perseverance, resilience, and the ability to stay true to yourself in the face of every obstacle. She paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. I've learned the hard way that people will laugh at you. They will laugh at your old car, your humble beginnings, your small dreams. They will mock you for not fitting into their idea of success. But I'm here to tell you that laughter is often just the sound of someone else's fear of your potential. A murmur spread through the crowd. Claire could see their expressions shift as she spoke, and she could feel the weight of every word. This wasn't just a speech, it was her truth. In fact, Claire continued with a slight smile, I've often wondered what it is about old cars that people find so funny. You see, my first car wasn't a luxury vehicle. It was a rusty Toyota Corolla. I remember the looks I got when I drove it to meetings, the laughter from my colleagues when they saw me pull up in it. But what they didn't know was that the engine inside that car, though small and unassuming, was the same engine that fueled everything I've achieved today. The crowd was silent now, hanging on her every word. My Corolla wasn't just a car. It was a symbol. It was all I had when I started my journey. It was my first taste of independence, my first step toward a life I could call my own. And while everyone else was busy laughing at my old car, I was busy working late nights, making deals, and building something that was truly mine. You see, success doesn't come from flashy exteriors. It comes from the strength of the engine inside. And if you can nurture that engine, you can go places no one ever thought you could. A round of applause followed her words, but Claire's mind was momentarily elsewhere. She wasn't thinking about the audience or the accolades. Her thoughts drifted back to the past, back to when she had first met Ethan. The man who had once laughed at her car, at her dreams, at her potential. She pushed the memory aside, focusing on the present, the stage, the moment, the audience that was hanging on every word. Claire ended her speech with a simple but powerful line. Sometimes, people laugh at old cars, forgetting the engine inside might own the road they're driving on. The crowd erupted into applause, a standing ovation that shook the walls of the room. But Claire barely noticed. She was already thinking about what came next. She was ready to move on from the past, to create something even greater than what she had already achieved. And as the applause continued to echo in the background, Claire knew she had just started the next chapter of her life. Later that night, in the quiet of her home, Claire sat at the dinner table with Lily, who was now older, 12, almost a teenager. The dinner table was filled with the familiar smell of pasta and garlic bread, but there was an unspoken tension between mother and daughter. Lily had always been wise beyond her years, and tonight was no different. After they finished eating, Lily sat back in her chair, her eyes thoughtful. "Mom," she began, her voice quiet but steady, "did Daddy ever love you?" The question hung in the air, and Claire felt a lump form in her throat. She put down her fork, taking a deep breath as she met Lily's gaze. The truth was complicated. Ethan had loved her in his own way, but that love had always been conditional, based on her potential, not who she was. It was a love that had come with strings attached, with the expectation that she would always be something more than what she was. "He loved what I could be," Claire said softly, her voice carrying the weight of years of unspoken truth. "I love him anyway. That was my mistake." Lily didn't say anything at first. She simply nodded, as if understanding that sometimes the truth was harder to say than to hear. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, Claire sat in the living room, watching the news. On the screen, Ethan's face appeared. He was being interviewed about the latest failure in his career, his attempts at rebuilding his business in the aftermath of losing everything. There was no hint of the man who once stood tall, the man who had mocked her, belittled her, and used her for his own gain. Now he was just another broken man, grasping at straws. Claire felt no satisfaction in watching him stumble. It wasn't revenge she sought, but clarity. The past was the past, and there was no need for bitterness. She had built a life on her own, a life that didn't rely on the approval of others, least of all Ethan's. As the television interview ended, Claire stood up and walked to the window. The streetlights outside were soft against the evening sky. She could see the silhouette of her old Toyota Corolla parked in the driveway, just a few steps away from the new luxury car she had recently purchased. The Corolla had been with her through it all. It had been the vehicle of her dreams when no one else believed in her. She smiled to herself as she turned away from the window. Some things never changed. Some things, like her Corolla, would always be part of her story. The following weeks passed quickly. Claire's influence in Crestville continued to grow. She became a mentor to young women starting businesses, offering advice, connections, and the kind of support she had never received. She held workshops, gave speeches, and showed women that success wasn't about what you drove or what others thought of you. It was about believing in your own potential, no matter where you started. And through it all, she kept her Corolla. It wasn't just a car. It was a reminder of everything she had overcome and everything she had yet to achieve. One evening, as Claire drove her new luxury car down Crestville's main street, she passed Ethan, who was standing at a bus stop. He looked thinner, smaller somehow. She couldn't help but glance at him as she drove by, but there was no anger, no resentment in her heart, just a quiet acceptance that the past was behind her. She didn't stop. She didn't honk the horn or wave. She just drove on, as she always had. In the rearview mirror, she could see Ethan still standing there, looking lost and uncertain. Some people laugh at old cars, forgetting the engine inside might own the road they're driving on. Moral lesson. True success isn't about appearances or outward achievements. It's about resilience, integrity, and the strength to stay true to your values, even when others may doubt you. Never underestimate the power of persistence and self-belief. The most valuable things in life aren't always the ones that shine the brightest. They're often the ones that quietly endure and grow, far beyond what anyone could imagine. If you found this story engaging, don't just watch, be part of the journey. Hit the like button to show your support, drop a comment to share your thoughts, and most importantly, subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. And if you know someone who would enjoy this, share it with them, your friends, colleagues, and family.